Welcome back to the final episode of Epic Family Podcast. I'm Larissa, your host, and together with Martin
Hello.
and Lucas.
Hi everyone.
In this episode, we will be discussing the final steps of podcast creation, advertising, marketing, and tracking statistics. By the end of this episode, you'll be fully equipped to spread the word about your podcast and build a loyal following. Advertising, marketing, and tracking statistics are essential for podcasts to grow their audience and understand their podcast performance. Martin, could you help us to understand more about this concept?
No. Yeah, of course.
The first one, advertising.
Okay, advertising is important because it helps you promote your podcast and reach a wider audience. By investing in paid advertising or utilizing free options like social media, you can increase the visibility of your podcast, attracting new listeners and build awareness for your content.
Okay, advertising. And about marketing?
Okay, the marketing involves various strategies to promote and engage with your audience. It includes creating a brand, designing a logo, building an online presence, and engaging with listeners through social media or website. Effective marketing helps you establish a strong identity and connects with your target audience and build a loyal community of listeners.
And why is tracking statistics important?
Well, maybe I help here.
Yeah.
Tracking statistics allows you to measure and analyze your podcast performance. By using tools like Libsyn, Podtrac, or Buzzsprout, you can gather valuable insights such as download numbers, listener demographics, and engagement metrics. These statistics help you understand your audience's preferences, identify trends, and make informed decisions to improve your content and grow your podcast.
So, in summary, advertising helping you reach new listeners, marketing helps you build a brand and engage it with your audience also, and tracking statistics help you measure your podcast success and make data-driven decisions to enhance your content.
That's it. Together, these elements contribute to the growth and success of your podcast. As you may know, one of the biggest challenges for new podcasters is getting their content seen and heard by their target audience. So let's dive into advertising and disseminating your podcast.
You talked about free advertising. How it's possible?
In this case, social media is your best friend. Create a dedicated account for your podcast, share episodes with your followers, join Facebook groups and forums related to your niche, and share your podcast there too. Like share the links, share the things that you're working on, share the topics that you will be talking about. So let's say our parents with difficulty raising their children with podcast target audience. So my tip is look for online forums where they speak about their challenges.
Yeah, and another thing, use relevant hashtags. They help your podcast to be easily found when someone searches some related content online. For example, let's use this example, no? In a podcast about difficulty in raising children, with an episode entitled something like My Child Won't Stop Crying, use some hashtags that are related to this topic. Child, cry, pain,
Parenting.
Yes.
There's a lot of hashtags. You can also look in the internet for hashtags related to your topic. There's a website that you can also go check the hashtags that are related to whatever topic you will be talking about.
Okay.
Another tip is ask your listeners to share your content with their friends and family. It could be useful to them. Also offer to be a guest on their other podcasts or invite guests to be on your podcast. This cross promotion allows you to tap into each other's audiences and gain exposure to new listeners.
Also, one tip is participate in relevant online forums, discussion boards, Facebook groups related to your podcast topic. There, you can share your expertise, provide valuable insights, and mention your podcast when it's relevant and helpful to the community. Also, create an email newsletter and encourage your listeners to subscribe to it. Regularly send updates, exclusive content, or episode highlights to keep them engaged and remind them of new episodes.
Interesting. One last piece of advice.
Yeah, collaborate with other content creators, bloggers, or influencers in your niche. Guest blog posts, joint projects, or shoutouts can introduce your podcast to a new audience and expand your reach.
That's a nice one. And what happens if someone could invest some money in advertising? Is it worth it?
If you have a lot of money to spend, paid advertising can be really an effective way to reach a wider audience. Platforms like Facebook, Instagram allow you to create ads that target specific demographics, interests, and behavior. So if you have these kind of data that can help you to reach the specific niche, the specific target audience that you're looking for through these paid ads. You can also use Google AdWords to create search and display ads that appear when people search for keywords related to your podcast.
And why is worth it?
Because knowing the specific demographics and interests and behavior of your audience is crucial for several reasons. Firstly, it helps you tailor your content to meet their preferences and needs, ensuring that your podcast resonates with them. By understanding their demographics such as age, gender, location, and interest, you can create episodes that are relevant and engaging to your target audience.
Okay.
Secondly, this knowledge allows you to effectively market and promote your podcast. By identifying the platforms, social media channels, or online communities where your target audience spends their time, you can strategically advertise and share your podcast in those spaces, increasing the chances of reaching the right people. For example, is it more valuable to promote your podcast on TikTok or Facebook? Does your target audience listen more to Spotify or podcast? These are some examples of the questions. So on TikTok, maybe most of the youth are using TikTok. On the Facebook, maybe a little bit older generation. So it depends. If you're targeting these youth, then you should go to TikTok. If you're targeting people who are older generation, you can go to Facebook, and goes on. So it depends on your target audience. If you have the data, if you have everything related to your target audience, the demographics and all of that, it can help you so much to choose the right platform or choose the right way to reach the target audience. Additionally, if you understand your audience's behavior, it can guide you in your content creation and delivery. If you know that your listeners prefer shorter episodes or enjoy specific formats or topics, you can adjust your podcast accordingly to keep them engaged and satisfied. It also helps you make informed decisions about potential collaborations and partnerships or sponsorships that align with your audience's interest and value.
Thank you very much, Martin. Now let's move on to marketing your podcast. Lucas, why is it important to do this?
Well, first of all, we need to say that marketing and advertising are closely related concepts, but have distinct differences when it comes to podcasts. Just to remember and reinforce it, the goal of advertising is to increase awareness and visibility, is attract new listeners and drive traffic to your podcast. On the other hand, marketing encompasses a broader set of activities aimed at building and engaging with your podcast audience. It includes not only advertising, but also branding, audience research, content strategy, social media engagement, community building, and more. Marketing focuses on understanding your target audience, creating a strong brand, and developing strategies to reach and connect with your listeners on a deeper level.
So, can we say that advertising is a part of marketing plan?
Yeah, we could say that.
What about the other activities inside a market plan? For example, branding?
Well, creating a brand and logo is essential for any podcast, as they help your audience recognize and remember your content. Like we said in a previous episode of Epic Family Podcast. For high budget podcasters, hiring a professional designer is the way to go. But for low budget podcasters, free tools like Canva or Adobe Spark can help you create your own branded logo.
Sure. We went deep into this in the episode 2 of our podcast series.
Yeah.
And why is audience research a part of marketing?
Well, even if we talked about building an audience in a previous episode, it is important to remember that this requires dedication and active engagement. One way to connect with your listeners is by actively seeking their feedback and responding to their comments and questions. By showing genuine interest in their opinions and incorporating their input into your podcast, you can foster a sense of community and loyalty among your audience.
I can offer you some tips as well. For example, creating a website or blog dedicated to your podcast is another effective strategy. This platform allows you to provide additional resources such as show notes, episode transcripts, and links to related content. So, for example, we talked in this episode about the microphones, the softwares, and so on. If we have a blog or a website that is dedicated to this podcast, we can also attach links or pictures to the softwares or the microphones that we talked about. So you can do this as well. By offering valuable and easily accessible information, you enhance the overall experience for your audience and make it easier for them to engage with your podcast. Another one is to consider offering exclusive content to your subscribers as a way to reward their loyalty. This could be bonus episodes, behind the scene insights, or like special interviews. By providing exclusive content, you give your audience a reason to stay connected and become more invested into your podcast.
And furthermore, building a community for your listeners on social media platforms can create a space for ongoing interaction and discussion. Encourage your audience to share their thoughts, engage with one another, and even provide recommendations or suggestions for future episodes. This fosters a sense of belonging and strengthens the relationship between you and your listeners.
Overall, active engaging with your audience, creating a dedicated online platform, offering exclusive content, and fostering a community are effective ways to build and sustain an engaged and loyal audience for your podcast, right?
Yeah. Also, it is very important to be present on social networks: Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, like Martin said. There you can publish your podcast news and maintain an interaction with your audience. It is not necessary to be present in all social networks, but look for the one or those where it is easier to meet with your target audience. We can repeat these examples that Martin said. If it would be easier to find young people on TikTok or Instagram and other people on Facebook, for example.
Last but not least, tracking statistics and adapting to change are crucial to the success of your podcast. Why?
Firstly, tracking statistics allows you to gain valuable insights into the performance of your podcast by analyzing metrics such as download numbers, listeners, demographics, and engagement rates. You can understand which episodes or topics resonate the most with your audience. This data-driven approach helps you make informed decisions about the future direction of your podcast, enabling you to create content that align with your listeners and preferences. So let's say, for example, you created 3 episodes. Each one has a different topic, but just one of them has the most download numbers or the most listened podcast. Then you would know that this topic, specifically this topic, you can recreate another episode talking extendedly about the same topic because people are really interested about this topic. Secondly, tracking statistics helps you measure the effectiveness of your marketing and promotional effects. You can monitor the impact of different advertising campaigns, social media strategies, or collaborations on your podcast's growth and audience reach. This information allows you to optimize your marketing statistics and focus on channels and methods that yield the best results. Lastly, the podcasting landscape is dynamic and constantly evolving. So by staying attentive to trends in industry changing and audience feedback, you can immediately adapt your content and strategies accordingly to this change. This flexibility allows you to stay relevant and keep up with the emerging topics or formats and cater to the evolving needs and preferences of your listeners. Adapting to changes ensures that your podcast remains engaging, fresh, and competitive in a rapidly evolving podcasting landscape.
Yeah, I can tell you a concrete case about the importance of how tracking statistics can help with the development of a podcast. When I worked at Cidade Nova Publishing House in Brazil, we started this podcast called Em Diálogo, in Dialogue, in 2020. At that time, it had a weekly publication frequency. Each week, we published an episode of a different type. I was responsible for one of these types of episodes, an interview program, and for publishing each episode and making monthly audience reports based on tracking statistics. In this report, usually I used it to collect data like total play reproductions for each episode published in that month, audience performance by day, that is, how many people played our podcast each day in that month, also a history line of the total plays per month, in order to know the variation of the total plays from one month to another. Like this month, we had 700 more reproductions than last month. Also, the statistics about the platforms used by the audience, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and others. And an interesting one was the geographic area where our audience was located, and it was worldwide. So, based on this information, I was able to make some observations to present to the marketing team of the publishing house. I could tell you some observations that I made in my audience report of the month of April 2021. First one, due to a technical mistake, one of our episodes was not published when it was planned for. One consequence was that 2 days later, no one accessed the podcast because the notification didn't arrive of a new episode published. On the other hand, in that same month, we published a special Easter episode, and it was the most listened episode that April. I wrote on that occasion, it is recommended to publish more episodes based on seasonal themes, as regular episodes about Mary are planned for the month of May. And one last interesting piece of information from this report. Soon after the publication of an interview episode about the COVID-19 vaccination, we had the month's peak hits, that is, the day with the highest number of accesses, reinforcing the importance of bringing relevant themes to the public on this type of episode that is eminently journalistic.
As we come to the end of Epic Family Podcast, we hope that this series has been helpful and in guiding you through this process of creating a successful podcast. Lucas, what you could say to one of your listeners who wants to start a podcast?
As I just mentioned, I worked on creating a podcast for the company I worked for. This I can say, don't be discouraged if the audience numbers are low or the reach is not what you expected. You never know who your message might reach. And that is the most precious thing to me, to be able to broadcast something that can change someone's day for the better.
And Martin, about the technical part of this job, what could you share with us about your own experience?
So, at the beginning, I would like to say that, yeah, we talked about high budget and low budget investment in this podcast, but the most important investment, in my opinion, about my experience in this field, is to invest in yourself, to invest in the ideas that you have. If you have an idea, invest in this idea, write about it, and then you can start writing the podcast. Because if you don't have ideas and you have the equipment, you have everything, well, you're not going to create a podcast that is really catching. Because there's a lot of podcasters in this field, in this market, and to be able to attract the attention, to be able to attract the target audience that you want, You have to be really creative to be able to compete with all of these podcasters. Also, you have to study really well the equipment and also the software, because you could be creative in writing a script, but also the creativity could be in the software itself. So you could add some sound effects, you can add some music that is really attractive to the audiences. Every element of the podcast, from the script, from the voice, from the music, and the sound effects, could really play a key role in attracting the audiences. So you can be creative in all of this only by studying really well the software and what does the software do. Also the equipment. It doesn't really matter if you have a very expensive microphone or whatever you have, whatever equipment you have, you can start a podcast. There's a really famous example about this. There's a really famous YouTuber, it's called MKBHD. He started as really young. He didn't have lots of equipment. He recorded a 5-minute video, as I remember, talking about something about technology. And he continued doing this because he had the passion to do these kind of videos. And now he's one of the most famous tech reviewers on the internet. So it began with an idea. He kept going on until he became really famous. If this is what you're seeking, if this is your passion to create a podcast and you have an idea, just keep investing in this idea and do it. About the podcast, in my experience, the simple as it could be. Everything, well, you can keep it more simple, the text or the music and everything, or the representation, the branding, the logo, as long as it could be simple, it can really reach a high number of people. Investing in marketing and advertising is really crucial, because the podcast could be really interesting, but if there's nobody that knows about it, nobody will listen to this podcast. So you have to invest a little bit more, not money, but time into researching and knowing your audiences, reaching their audiences, going through groups and Facebook and all of these platforms that could potentially have your target audience, and go speak to them, reach them, communicate with them, and be able to have the courage to talk and share with also friends and family. And if there's podcasters that are talking about the same topic, reach them and send a message that, hey, I'm talking about this topic, maybe we can have a collaboration, maybe you can share also my podcast in your platform. Don't be afraid to be rejected, because you could get rejected many times, but just keep going, and one day you will achieve the amount of number of listeners that you want. And then keep going with the topics, keep going with the ideas, and invest more in yourself.
Yeah, it's very important. So remember, building a podcast audience takes time, patience, and persistence. Stay committed to your vision and continue to create high quality content that resonates with your listeners.
After all, creating a podcast is a rewarding experience, and we encourage you to embrace the challenges and opportunities that will come with it.
And don't worry, whether you have a low budget or a high budget, there are always ways to make your podcast stand out and reach new audiences.
So go ahead and start creating. Share your passion, tell your story, and connect with your listeners. And always remember, your podcast has the power to inform, entertain, and inspire people around the world. Good luck and happy podcasting! Epic Family Podcast is a project founded by Erasmus Plus and Bovitia. Thanks for listening.